The ship had been watching for 50 cycles. It sat in the darkness beyond the 8th planet, silent and patient, recording everything about the small blue world near the yellow star. Overseer Vorath stood on the command deck of his vessel, the silencing hand. He was tall, with gray skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His eyes, black and cold, studied the holographic display floating before him. The blue planet rotated slowly in the projection, covered in clouds and water and patches of green and brown land. "Show me the creatures again," Vorath commanded. The display changed. Images appeared of the dominant species. They walked on 2 legs. They had soft skin, no natural armor, no claws worth mentioning. They built structures of stone and metal. They moved around in wheeled vehicles and primitive flying machines. They had never traveled beyond their single gray moon. Sub-Commander Rin stepped forward. She was younger than Vorath, with the same gray skin but sharper features. "They call themselves humans, Overseer. They have existed for a short time, perhaps 200,000 of their years. And in that time, what have they achieved?" Rin pulled up more data. "They have split the atom. They have basic satellite networks. They possess nuclear weapons capable of destroying their own cities. They have sent small robots to nearby planets, but have not followed themselves." Vorath made a sound of disgust. "They built weapons to destroy themselves before they built ships to save themselves. Typical of primitive species." "There is something else," Rin said carefully. "They are not unified. The planet is divided into many territories. They fight wars against each other constantly. Resources, beliefs, land. They seem incapable of cooperation." This made Vorath smile. It was not a pleasant expression. A fractured species with no space capability, no energy shields, no understanding of what exists beyond their tiny system. "This will not be a conquest, Rin. This will be a harvest." The Helix Dominion had taken over 200 worlds across the galaxy. The pattern was always the same. Arrive with overwhelming force. Destroy enough to create terror. Wait for surrender. Take what was useful and move on. No species had ever successfully resisted. Most surrendered within days of first contact. "Prepare the fleet," Vorath ordered. "We move in 30 cycles." Far away, on the blue planet called Earth, a woman named Yuna was working late. The Busan Deep Space Observatory sat on a hill overlooking the ocean. It was a quiet place, filled with computers and telescopes and people who spent their lives staring at the stars. Yuna had worked there for 7 years. She was not famous. She simply loved the universe and wanted to understand it. For 3 weeks, she had been tracking something strange. An object sitting in the darkness beyond Neptune. At first, she thought it was an asteroid. Then, she thought it was a comet. But asteroids and comets did not stay perfectly still. They did not maintain constant temperatures. They did not emit faint energy signatures that matched no known natural phenomenon. On a cold Tuesday night, Yuna finally confirmed what she had feared and hoped in equal measure. The object was artificial. It was not from Earth. And it was watching. Her hands trembled as she picked up the phone. She called her supervisor first, then the government. Within 6 hours, people in suits were standing in her small office, asking questions she did not have answers to. How long has it been there? Perhaps decades. What does it want? Yuna looked at the men in suits, at their serious faces and expensive clothes, and she told them the truth. "I do not know, but something that watches for this long is making a decision, and I do not think we will like what it decides." Captain Tejo received the classified briefing aboard the aircraft carrier Dokdo. He was a man of 43 years, with a weathered face and calm eyes that had seen combat and hardship and loss. He had served in the Navy for 20 years. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. The images on the screen showed a shape in the darkness of space. It was massive. The analysts estimated it was larger than any structure humans had ever built. And it was not alone. Thermal imaging suggested at least a dozen similar objects nearby. "We believe they are spacecraft," the intelligence officer explained. "We believe they have been observing Earth for an extended period. We do not know their intentions." Taeho studied the images for a long moment. "Their intentions are clear," he said quietly. "You do not send 12 ships to watch. You send one ship to watch. You send 12 ships to act." The room went silent. "How long do we have?" someone asked. "Unknown," the officer admitted. "Days, weeks, perhaps months." Taeho thought of his daughter, studying at university in Seoul. He thought of his elderly parents in their small apartment. He thought of the millions of people going about their lives, unaware that something vast and unknowable was sitting in the darkness, deciding their fate. Does the public know? No. The governments have agreed to keep this secret until we understand more. Taeho almost laughed. Understand more? We have discovered that we are not alone in the universe, that something is watching us, and we want to understand more before we tell people. By the time we understand, it may be too late to prepare. In a small communications room in the same military complex, a young woman named Hana sat with headphones pressed to her ears. She was a signals analyst, trained to find patterns in noise, meaning in chaos. For the past week, she had been assigned to monitor any unusual transmissions from space. Most of it was garbage, static, echoes, the background noise of the universe. But tonight, she found something different. A rhythmic pulse hidden in the static. Too regular to be natural, too complex to be random. She ran it through her computers. She analyzed the frequency. She mapped the pattern. It was a countdown. Hana removed her headphones slowly. Her face had gone pale. She understood what she was hearing, even though she wished she did not. The watchers had finished watching. They were coming. Across the world, in secret rooms and hidden bunkers, leaders gathered to face the impossible question. What do you do when you discover you are prey? What do you do when the hunter is beyond anything you can fight? Some wanted to hide. Some wanted to reach out, to communicate, to hope for peace. But a few, like Taeho, understood the truth. Peace is offered between equals. Whatever was coming did not see humanity as equals. It saw them as something to be taken. And so, in the shadow of extinction, humanity began to prepare. Not because they believed they could win, but because surrender was not something humans did well. The quiet blue world had been noticed. The galaxy was about to learn that being noticed was very different from being helpless. The Helix Dominion did not send warnings. They did not ask for surrender. They did not announce themselves with words or messages or demands. They announced themselves with fire. On a clear spring morning, the sky above Seoul turned white. A beam of light, brighter than the sun, fell from the heavens and touched the earth. Where it touched, everything vanished. Buildings, streets, people, gone in less than a second, replaced by a crater of melted glass and ash. 12 million people lived in Seoul. In the time it takes to draw a breath, most of them ceased to exist. It happened everywhere at once: Sydney, Cairo, Sao Paulo, Moscow, Los Angeles, 17 cities across 6 continents, erased from the world in the span of minutes. The beams came from orbit, from the massive ships that had finally moved from their hiding place beyond Neptune. There was no defense, there was no warning. There was only light and heat and death. Overseer Vorath watched from the command deck of the Silencing Hand. The holographic display showed the blue planet, marked with glowing points where the bombardment had struck. He felt nothing. This was simply protocol. Standard procedure for a species that might resist. Estimated casualties? He asked. 3 billion, Rin reported. Approximately 1/3 of their total population. Good. Open communication channels. Broadcast the standard surrender terms in their primary languages. The message went out across every frequency, every screen, every device on Earth. A cold, translated voice, speaking words that billions of survivors heard through their shock and grief. People of Earth, you have witnessed the power of the Helix Dominion. Further resistance will result in complete extinction. Surrender your planet, your resources, and your labor. You have one planetary rotation to comply. They gave humanity 1 day to give up everything. In a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Gangwon Province, General Daesung listened to the message. He was an old soldier, with gray hair and a face marked by decades of service. Blood ran down his forehead from a wound he had not bothered to bandage. Around him, officers and technicians worked frantically, trying to establish contact with surviving military units around the world. Seoul was gone. His daughter had lived in Seoul. Daesung closed his eyes for a moment. He allowed himself 3 seconds of grief. Then he opened his eyes and got to work. Get me every surviving command structure on the planet, he ordered. Every general, every admiral, every leader still breathing. We need to coordinate. Sir, one of his officers said carefully, perhaps we should consider the terms. If we resist, they will destroy everything. Everyone. Daesung looked at the young man. He felt it himself. But he also understood something else. Something that ran deeper than fear. If we surrender, we lose everything anyway. Our freedom, our future, our children become slaves to creatures who killed billions of us without a single word of negotiation. What do we preserve by kneeling? He shook his head. No, we fight. Even if we lose, we fight, because that is who we are. Within hours, a fragile network formed. Surviving leaders from dozens of nations, connected through damaged satellites and underground cables, agreed to one thing. They would not surrender. The United Earth Defense Council was born in fire and desperation, held together by nothing but shared rage and the refusal to disappear quietly. Daesung broadcast a message to every surviving military unit on Earth. His face was tired and bloody, but his voice was steel. They believe we are broken. They believe we will kneel. They have studied us from afar and decided we are weak, divided, primitive. They are wrong. We have always been at war. With nature, with each other, with ourselves. War is what we know. War is what we do. And now, for the first time in our history, we have a common enemy. Show them what humanity does when its back is against the wall. Show them what we do when our world burns. The Dominion expected surrender within hours. Instead, they received something they had never encountered before. Resistance. Captain Taeho was at sea when the bombardment happened. The carrier Dokdo had been positioned in the Pacific as part of the secret preparations. It survived because it was far from any targeted city. Taeho gathered his crew on the deck. They were sailors and pilots, men and women who had signed up to defend their country. Now their country was ash, and they were being asked to defend their species. I will not lie to you, Taeho said. Our weapons were not built for this enemy. Our ships were not designed for this war. Many of us will die, perhaps all of us. He paused, looking at their faces. But I will not hide in the ocean while those things take our world. If you wish to leave, I will not stop you. But I am going to fight. Who stands with me? Not one person left. The first counterattack was desperate and almost suicidal. Taeho led a small fleet toward a Dominion landing craft that had descended near the coast of Japan. The alien ship was enormous, a dark mass of metal and energy shields that seemed impossible to hurt. They attacked anyway. Missiles exploded against the alien shields. Fighter jets swarmed around the massive vessel, firing everything they had. Most of their weapons did nothing. The shields absorbed bullets and rockets and bombs like they were rain against a mountain. But Tejo had studied the alien ships during the brief days before the invasion. He had noticed something. The shields flickered when the ship extended landing supports. For a few seconds, there were gaps. All ships, target the base of the landing supports. Fire everything the moment they extend. It was a guess, a desperate hope, but it was all they had. The landing supports extended, the shields flickered, and in that moment, 100 missiles found their mark. The Dominion landing craft shuddered. Fire erupted from its lower sections. It tilted, groaned, and crashed into the sea, taking thousands of alien soldiers with it. Humanity's first kill. 8 ships were lost in the attack. Hundreds of sailors died. But when the survivors regrouped, there was something new in their eyes. The enemy could be hurt. The enemy could be killed. Vorath received the report with disbelief. A primitive species with primitive weapons had destroyed one of his landing craft. Unacceptable. How? He demanded. Rin studied the combat data. They found a weakness in our shield cycling during landing operations. They exploited it with coordinated fire. They should not have been able to coordinate. Their communications infrastructure was destroyed. They found a way, Overseer. They adapted. Vorath dismissed this with a wave of his hand. One lucky strike means nothing. Increase ground forces. Crush them with numbers. This changes nothing. But Rin was not so certain. She had watched footage from ground engagements. Human soldiers fighting in the ruins of their cities. They did not retreat when outnumbered. They did not surrender when wounded. They used the rubble as cover, attacked at night, set traps in buildings and tunnels. One piece of footage stayed with her. A human soldier, both legs destroyed, dragging himself forward with his arms, still firing his weapon at the advancing Dominion troops. He died, with his finger on the trigger, taking 2 more aliens with him. These creatures did not behave like prey. They behaved like something else entirely. Overseer, Rin said quietly, I believe we may have made a mistake. Vorath looked at her with cold anger. The Helix Dominion does not make mistakes. These are insects. Dangerous insects perhaps, but insects nonetheless. We will step on them until there are none left. He gave the order for increased bombardment. More cities would burn. More billions would die. But across the wounded earth, in bunkers and mountains and hidden places, humanity prepared. They had lost the first day. They had lost cities and billions of lives. But they had proven something. The enemy was not invincible. The enemy could bleed. And humans had a very long history of making their enemies bleed. The Helix Dominion had conquered 217 worlds. On every world, the pattern was the same. The initial bombardment broke the spirit of the population. Survivors emerged from the rubble, traumatized and desperate, and accepted whatever terms were offered. Resistance, when it existed at all, collapsed within days. Earth was different. 3 months after the first bombardment, the humans were still fighting. Not just fighting, they were getting better at it. In a hidden laboratory carved into the Swiss Alps, Dr. Yuna worked without sleep. Around her, teams of scientists from a dozen nations studied pieces of crashed alien technology. Every fragment was precious. Every circuit, every alloy, every crystal held secrets that could mean survival or extinction. The shields work on resonance, Yuna explained to the gathered military commanders via secure video link. They vibrate at a specific frequency to deflect kinetic and energy attacks. But if we can match that frequency, we can disrupt them. How long to develop a countermeasure? General Daesung asked. We have already done it. Yuna held up a small device, no bigger than a phone. We call it a harmonic disruptor. Attach it to any explosive, and it will create a frequency pulse on detonation. Their shields will fail for approximately 2 seconds. 2 seconds. It was not much, but it was enough. Within weeks, human weapons began finding their marks. Missiles that had bounced off alien shields now penetrated them. Tanks that had been helpless against Dominion armor now killed it. The technology was crude, copied without full understanding, but it worked. The Dominion had given humanity a gift without meaning to. Every crashed ship, every dead soldier, every piece of abandoned equipment became a classroom. And humans, it turned out, were very fast learners. Hana worked in a bunker beneath the ruins of Busan. She had not seen sunlight in 2 months. Her eyes were red from staring at screens. Her fingers ached from typing. But she did not stop. She had cracked the Dominion communication codes. It had taken weeks of work, analyzing captured transmissions, finding patterns, building translation matrices. The alien language was complex, built on mathematical structures that human languages did not use. But language was still language. It carried meaning, and meaning could be understood. Now Hana listened to the enemy. She heard their orders, their reports, their complaints. She learned their fleet movements before they happened. She discovered their supply lines, their weak points, their fears. They are afraid of the water, Hana reported to Captain Taeho. Their species evolved on a dry world. They have no experience with large bodies of liquid. Their armor is not designed for it. Their vehicles cannot operate in it. Taeho smiled, for the first time in months. Then we will bring them to the water. The Battle of the Pacific became legendary. Taeho gathered every surviving naval vessel he could find. Submarines from 6 nations. Destroyers and frigates patched together from damaged fleets, even civilian ships loaded with weapons and volunteers. It was not a proper navy. It was a desperate collection of floating weapons held together by determination. The Dominion had established a major landing zone on the coast of Japan. Thousands of alien troops and hundreds of vehicles were massed there, preparing to push inland. Taeho planned to stop them. The attack came from below and above at the same time. Submarines launched torpedoes modified with harmonic disruptors. The weapons struck the alien transport ships in the harbor, tearing through weakened shields and breaking hulls. Alien soldiers poured into the water, and the water killed them. Their breathing systems failed in the salt and pressure. They drowned by the hundreds, while human ships circled like sharks. From above, aircraft dropped bombs on the landing zone. Ground forces, led by Sergeant Wu Jin, attacked from the mountains, trapping the surviving aliens between fire and sea. Wu Jin was a small man with a quiet voice, but his soldiers followed him without question. He had been a special forces operator before the invasion. He had trained his whole life for impossible missions. Now, every mission was impossible, and he did them anyway. Push them into the water, Wu Jin ordered his troops. They cannot swim. They cannot breathe. The ocean is our weapon. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, an entire Dominion battalion had been destroyed. Thousands of alien bodies floated in the red-stained sea. Human casualties were high, but the survivors stood on the beach and watched the alien corpses drift with the tide. Not just survived, won. Vorath received the news in silence. His face showed nothing, but his hands trembled slightly. This was not supposed to happen. Primitive species did not defeat Dominion battalions. They did not adapt to superior technology. They did not exploit weaknesses that had never been weaknesses before. How? He asked Rin. They learn, Overseer, faster than any species we have encountered. Every battle teaches them. Every defeat makes them stronger. Every piece of our technology they capture becomes a weapon against us. Then we stop losing technology. We destroy everything before they can capture it. We have tried. They are too fast. They recover wreckage before our cleanup teams can reach it. They take our dead and study them. They take our weapons and copy them. Rin paused. I do not think they can be broken through force alone. Every species can be broken. But these creatures have spent their entire existence at war. Not with outside enemies, but with themselves. They have bunkers designed to survive their own nuclear weapons. They have contingency plans for every disaster. They have been preparing for extinction-level threats for generations. They simply did not know the threat would come from the stars. Vorath stared at the tactical display. Red markers showed Dominion positions. Blue markers showed human resistance. 3 months ago, the display had been almost entirely red. Now patches of blue spread across every continent, growing larger every day. Then we will burn every patch of blue until there are none left, Vorath decided. Increase orbital bombardment, destroy their hiding places, destroy their laboratories, destroy everything. The bombardments resumed. Mountains collapsed. Underground bases were vaporized. Millions more died. But humanity went deeper. They hid in places the Dominion could not reach. Abandoned mines, natural cave systems, underwater facilities. They scattered like seeds in the wind, too small and too numerous to destroy completely. And they kept fighting. In a tiny shelter beneath the rubble of what had once been Tokyo, a group of survivors listened to a broadcast. It was General Dae-sung, his voice rough but steady, speaking to whoever could hear. They want us to give up. They want us to accept that resistance is pointless. They want us to believe that we are small and weak and helpless against their power. But here is what they do not understand. We have always been small. We have always faced forces greater than ourselves. Nature tried to kill us with ice and fire and plague. We survived. We conquered. We spread across our world despite everything that tried to stop us. This enemy is powerful. But power is not everything. Determination is everything. Adaptation is everything. The will to survive is everything. And we have more of that than any species in this galaxy. In her bunker, Hana listened to the broadcast while monitoring alien communications. She smiled faintly. The Dominion commanders were arguing with each other. They were demanding reinforcements. They were questioning their strategy. They were afraid. The quiet blue world had teeth, and it was learning how to bite. 6 months after the invasion began, the Helix Dominion High Council summoned Overseer Vorath to explain his failure. Failure. The word burned in Vorath's mind as he prepared his report. The Dominion had never used that word for a conquest before. Delays, perhaps, complications occasionally, but never failure. Yet the numbers did not lie. The Dominion had suffered more casualties on Earth than in their previous 50 conquests combined. Supply lines were constantly disrupted. 3 command vessels had been damaged by human attacks. Ground forces reported low morale and growing fear. Fear. Dominion soldiers did not feel fear. They were the hunters, never the hunted. But something had changed on this small blue world. The humans did not fight like prey. They fought like predators. They attacked without warning. They used the terrain itself as a weapon, collapsing buildings on Dominion patrols, flooding tunnels, poisoning water supplies. Before Vorath could leave for the High Council meeting, the humans struck again, and this time they struck at the heart. Sergeant Wu Jin had volunteered for the mission, knowing he would not return. The plan was simple in concept and nearly impossible in execution. Board the Silencing Hand and kill Overseer Vorath. The flagship had descended to low orbit to coordinate the increasingly chaotic ground operations. It was protected by dozens of escort vessels and the most powerful shields in the Dominion fleet. No human weapon could touch it. But humans did not need weapons. They needed access. Hana had provided the codes. Over months of intercepting and decoding alien communications, she had assembled a complete picture of Dominion's security protocols. Ship identification codes, docking procedures, everything Wu Jin needed to get inside. The codes will get you through the outer defenses, Hana told him through a scratchy radio connection. But once you are inside, you will be on your own. I cannot help you. You have helped enough, Wu Jin replied. Just make sure the fleet is ready. The strike team consisted of 200 volunteers. Soldiers, yes, but also farmers, teachers, factory workers, and students. People who had never held a weapon before the invasion. People who had lost everything and everyone they loved. People who wanted to hurt the enemy, even if it cost them their lives. They used captured Dominion shuttles, painted with stolen identification codes. They approached the silencing hand in formation, mimicking a supply convoy. The outer defenses scanned them and found nothing wrong. The docking bays opened. The humans poured in like a flood. The fighting was brutal and close. Dominion soldiers were larger, stronger, better armed, but they were not prepared for an enemy that did not care about survival. The humans charged through plasma fire without stopping. They detonated explosives strapped to their own bodies. They died in groups of 5 to kill one alien guard. Wu Jin led the push toward the command deck. His team started with 50 soldiers. By the time they reached the outer doors, only 12 remained. By the time they breached those doors, only 3 were still standing. Wu Jin himself had been shot twice. His left arm hung useless at his side. Blood soaked his uniform. But he kept moving, kept firing, kept pushing forward. Vorath stood on the command deck, watching the chaos on his security displays. He could not believe what he was seeing. Humans, dying by the dozens, pushing through his elite guards through sheer will and numbers. It was not possible. It was not how inferior species behaved. The doors to his command chamber exploded inward. Wu Jin stood in the smoke, supported by a broken railing, because his legs no longer worked properly. His weapon was empty. His team was dead. He was alone. Vorath looked at the small, bleeding creature that had invaded his ship. "You cannot win," he said. "Even if you kill me, another will take my place. The Dominion is eternal." Wu Jin smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Maybe, but you will not be." He reached for the detonator strapped to his chest. The explosion killed Vorath instantly. It destroyed the command deck and crippled the flagship's primary systems. The silencing hand, the most powerful vessel in the invasion fleet, went dark. Across Earth, the effect was immediate. Dominion forces relied on centralized command. Their tactics, their coordination, their supply distribution, all flowed through the silencing hand. When that flow stopped, chaos erupted. Units lost contact with each other. Orders stopped coming. Reinforcements did not know where to go. And humanity was waiting. Captain Tejo had positioned the rebuilt human fleet in the shadow of the moon. For weeks, they had gathered strength, repairing captured alien vessels, integrating new technologies, training crews for the battle they knew was coming. When the silencing hand went dark, Tejo gave the order. "All ships, attack. Everything we have, now." The human fleet emerged from hiding like a storm. Warships modified with alien shields and weapons. Missile platforms carrying warheads tipped with harmonic disruptors. Fighter craft piloted by men and women who had trained on alien flight systems for months. They hit the disorganized Dominion fleet from 3 directions at once. General Daesung coordinated the ground offensive from his mountain bunker. His voice, calm and steady, directed attacks across every continent. Resistance cells that had been hiding for months emerged to strike. Bridges were destroyed to trap Dominion convoys. Fuel depots were sabotaged. Command posts were overrun. "No mercy," Daesung ordered. "No retreat. No prisoners. This is our home. We take it back today." The battle lasted 18 hours. Human casualties were enormous. Ships were destroyed. Soldiers died by the thousands. But the Dominion forces, leaderless and confused, could not mount an effective defense. They fought as individuals, not as a unified force, and individuals could be overwhelmed. One by one, the Dominion ships broke formation. Some tried to retreat to orbit. Some tried to flee the system entirely. Most did not make it. Sub-Commander Rin found herself in command of the shattered fleet. She gathered what vessels remained, and made a decision that no Dominion officer had ever made before. She ordered a retreat. All ships, withdraw from the system. Fall back to the rendezvous point. This battle is lost. The remaining Dominion vessels, less than a quarter of the original invasion force, limped away from Earth. They passed through the asteroid belt, past the outer planets, and vanished into the darkness between stars. The humans watched them go. In his bunker, Dae-sung allowed himself to sit down for the first time in 2 days. His body ached, his heart was heavy with the weight of everyone they had lost. But when he looked at the tactical display, at the complete absence of red markers for the first time in 6 months, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Taeho stood on the bridge of his battered flagship, staring at the stars through a cracked viewscreen. Around him, his crew cheered and embraced and wept with relief. They had done the impossible. They had driven off an enemy that had conquered 200 worlds. But Taeho did not cheer. He knew this was not over. The Dominion would return. Other enemies would hear about the blue world that had resisted. The galaxy was vast and full of predators. "What now, Captain?" his first officer asked. Taeho turned away from the stars. "Now we prepare. We build. We learn. Today we survived. Tomorrow we make sure no one ever thinks we are easy prey again." Across the galaxy, news of Earth's victory spread. Other species, some who had lived under Dominion rule for generations, heard the impossible story. A primitive world, a fractured species, no space fleet, no energy shields, no galactic experience. And they had won. For the first time in millennia, the Helix Dominion looked weak, and the humans looked like something no one had expected. Dangerous. 1 year after the invasion began, Earth was a world transformed. The scars remained. Cities were still rubble. Coastlines had changed shape from orbital bombardment. 4 billion people had died, more than half the human population. Every family had lost someone. Every nation had lost everything and rebuilt from nothing. But humanity had not just survived. They had changed. The first human starships patrolled the solar system. They were crude vessels, built from salvaged alien technology and human determination, held together with welds and prayers. But they flew. They watched. They ensured that nothing would ever approach Earth undetected again. In orbit, defense platforms bristled with weapons that could crack moons. On the ground, factories worked day and night to produce more ships, more weapons, more shields. The species that had been too divided to explore its own solar system was now racing to fortify it. And then came the invitation. The Galactic Assembly was a council of 112 species representing governments and civilizations across the known galaxy. They did not rule. They had no military. They simply provided a place where species could talk instead of fight. For thousands of years, they had ignored Earth. Primitive worlds were not worth noticing. But Earth was no longer primitive. Earth had done something no one thought possible. Earth had broken the Dominion. Dr. Yuna was chosen as humanity's first ambassador. She had led the team that cracked alien technology. She had coordinated the scientific effort that turned scraps of wreckage into weapons of war. Now she would speak for her entire species. She traveled to the assembly aboard a captured Dominion cruiser that human engineers had rebuilt and renamed. They called it Defiance. The name felt appropriate. The assembly chamber was vast, a structure the size of a small city floating in orbit around a neutral world. Representatives of species from across the galaxy filled the circular hall. Some were tall and thin, with skin like metal. Some were short and covered in fur. Some floated in liquid-filled containers. Some existed as patterns of light. All of them were watching the small human woman who stood alone at the center of the chamber. Yuna looked around at the assembled species. Many of them had been conquered by the Dominion at some point in their history. They had surrendered. They had accepted terms. They had survived by bowing. They expected Earth to bow too. "You watched," Yuna began, her voice amplified to fill the chamber. "When the Dominion came for us, you watched. When they burned our cities and murdered billions of our people, you calculated the odds and decided we would fall. You did not warn us. You did not help us. You simply waited to see which predator would claim our world." The chamber was silent. Some species shifted uncomfortably. Others simply stared with unreadable expressions. "We do not blame you for this. Survival is not a small thing. Many of you chose submission because you believed it was the only way to preserve your people. Perhaps you were right. Perhaps for your species, there was no other choice." Yuna paused. She thought of Wu Jin dying in fire to kill an enemy commander. She thought of Tae-ho, leading impossible attacks with ships held together by hope. She thought of Dae-sung, refusing to surrender, even when surrender seemed like the only option. But we are different. We did not evolve in safety. Our world was harsh. Our history was violent. We spent our entire existence fighting nature, fighting disease, fighting each other. By the time we discovered we were not alone in the universe, we had already survived 1,000 extinction events of our own making. She stepped forward, and something in her bearing made the assembled species lean back slightly. The Dominion believed we were helpless. They saw our divisions and called us weak. They saw our primitive technology and called us inferior. They saw our small blue world and saw only another harvest. Her voice hardened. They were wrong. Our divisions taught us to adapt to any enemy. Our primitive technology taught us to create weapons from nothing. Our small blue world taught us to fight for every inch of ground. On a balcony overlooking the chamber, Sub-Commander Rin watched the humans speak. Rin had been disgraced after the retreat from Earth. Her career was over. But she had been allowed to attend the assembly as an observer, perhaps to witness humanity's inevitable humiliation. Instead, she witnessed something else entirely. "We lost 4 billion people," Yuna continued. 4 billion. Try to understand that number. 4 billion lives ended in fire and blood. We mourn them, we honor them, but we do not apologize for surviving. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of species after species. "Let me be clear about something. We did not win because we are stronger than the Dominion. We did not win because our weapons are better, or our ships are faster. We won because we refused to lose, because every human who died bought time for another to fight, because surrender is not something we know how to do." The assembly remained silent. No one had ever spoken to them like this. Newly discovered species were supposed to be humble, grateful for acknowledgement, eager to join the established order. This human was not humble. "We are rebuilding now. Our world is scarred, but it is still ours. Our people are wounded, but they are still fighting. And we want every species in this chamber, every power in this galaxy, to understand something very clearly." Yuna's voice dropped, becoming cold and quiet. "Earth is not helpless. Earth has never been helpless. We were simply quiet. We stayed in our small corner of the galaxy and asked nothing of anyone. That time is over. We are part of the galactic community now, whether you welcome us or not." She raised her hand, and a holographic display appeared behind her. It showed Earth, battered but beautiful, blue and green and white with clouds. Around it, human ships patrolled. Defense platforms glittered in orbit. We do not seek war. We do not seek conquest. We want to trade, to learn, to grow alongside other species in peace. But if any power in this galaxy threatens our world again, if anyone looks at Earth and sees easy prey, if the Dominion or anyone else ever comes for our children again, we will show you what we showed them. The display changed. It showed footage from the war. Human soldiers charging through fire, ships ramming enemy vessels, cities burning, but populations refusing to flee. Wu Jin's final smile before the explosion. Teiho's fleet emerging from behind the moon. We will make you pay in blood for every kilometer. We will teach you what it means to fight an enemy that does not fear death. We will drag you down into the mud and the fire and the darkness, and we will not stop until you are broken or we are extinct. Yuna let the images fade. The Helix Dominion thought they were harvesting a primitive world. Instead, they woke something they did not understand. Something that has spent millions of years learning how to survive against impossible odds. Something that refuses to accept extinction. She looked directly at the section where Rin sat among the observers. The sub-commander met her eyes and saw no fear there, only certainty. We are humanity. We are the species that builds cathedrals on fault lines, that sails wooden boats across endless oceans, that climbs mountains because they are there. We are the species that split the atom, walked on the moon, and refused to die when the galaxy came to kill us. Her final words echoed through the silent chamber. The quiet blue world has spoken, and we will not be quiet again. On Earth, General Daesung watched the broadcast in his rebuilt command center. Around him, officers and technicians worked to coordinate the ongoing reconstruction. The old soldier allowed himself a small, rare smile. On the Bridge of Defiance, Captain Teiho listened to Yuna's speech as his ship held position near the assembly station. His crew, survivors of impossible battles, stood at their stations with pride in their eyes. In a communications center on the moon, Hana monitored transmissions from across the galaxy. Already, species were talking about Earth, whispering about the humans, wondering what else the quiet blue world was capable of. Years later, travelers and traders would tell stories about Earth, the world that broke the Dominion, the species that chose extinction over surrender, the small blue planet that taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. And in the vast darkness between stars, when powerful empires drew their maps and planned their conquests, they marked one small system with a warning that would endure for 1,000 generations. The warning had no symbol and needed no explanation. It said simply, "Humans, do not provoke." The quiet blue world had announced itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy had learned, too late, that some prey was better left alone.